There's a kind of person you've probably met. They'll stay up until 2 in the morning, helping you move apartments, edit your resume, talk you through a breakup. But if you ask them, "Hey, how are you really doing?" they'll smile and say, "I'm fine. I've got it handled." They always have it handled. And somehow, that's the saddest part. We tend to admire people who never ask for help. We call them strong, self-sufficient, independent. But psychology tells a different story. Because for many people, the inability to ask for help isn't a sign of strength. It's a wound, a quiet, invisible one, shaped over years, sometimes decades, of learning that needing someone wasn't safe. Today, we're going to look at 6 reasons why some people carry everything alone. Not because they want to, but because somewhere along the way, they learned they had to. Reasons 1 through 5, you may already sense them. But reason 6, the one waiting quietly near the end, is the one most people never talk about. And it might be the most revealing of all. Stay with me. It usually starts in childhood. Not always with a single dramatic event. Sometimes it's something quieter. A parent who was too busy, too stressed, or simply not emotionally available. A child who reached out for comfort and found nothing there. Over time, that child learns a rule. If I need something, I won't get it. So I better stop needing things. Some children learn to silence their crying very early on. By the time they grew up, they no longer remembered they ever had a voice. Psychologists call this an avoidant attachment style. It's not a flaw in character. It's an adaptation. A survival strategy that once made perfect sense. The problem is, strategies learned in childhood don't always know when to stop. So the adult who never asks for help is often still following the rules of a world they no longer live in. Still protecting a child who no longer needs protecting. In the same way, they're not stubborn. They're not proud. They're just someone who was once hurt. In a place where asking for help came with a price they were never willing to pay again. There are 6 reasons underneath this behavior, and they don't announce themselves loudly. They just quietly run the show. The first is the fear of rejection. Not just, they might say no, but the deeper belief that if they say no, it means something about your worth. That being turned down isn't just inconvenient, it's confirming. The second is the fear of owing. In some people's experience, help always came with strings attached. It was brought up later, used as leverage, so they made a silent decision. I would rather stand alone in the storm than be a debtor under someone else's sunshine. They don't want to be in anyone's ledger, not because they're ungrateful, but because they've seen what it looks like when a favor gets called in. The third is the fear of being seen as weak. Think of it like a knight in full armor. Upright, dignified, unshakable. But armor is heavy. And sometimes, just sometimes, even the bravest knight needs to take it off, just to breathe. The fourth is the fear of being a burden. They genuinely believe their problems are too much, that other people have enough to carry, and adding to it would be selfish. And the fifth, perhaps the quietest of all, is the fear of intimacy. Because asking for help requires something terrifying. Vulnerability. It means letting someone see you when you're not okay. And if you've been hurt by people who were supposed to see you clearly, that's an enormous risk to take again. Here's a moment many of you will recognize. You're sitting with your phone. You open a chat with someone you trust. You start typing. You explain what you need. Maybe you even get to the point where you're about to hit send. And then you stop. You read it back. You think, this is too much. They're busy. I can figure this out myself. So you delete it. Every word. And you tell yourself, I'll message them later. But later never comes. No message is ever sent. This isn't weakness. This is actually someone with an extraordinarily high sense of self-respect. Someone who would rather carry the weight alone than risk the discomfort of being seen needing something. The tragedy isn't that they deleted the message. The tragedy is that they never learned. They didn't have to. Here's what makes this so painfully ironic. These are often the most generous people you'll ever meet. They show up for everyone. They give without being asked. They remember your problems weeks after you've forgotten you mentioned them.
but they've built their relationships on a one-way current. And over time, this creates a loneliness that's hard to explain. Because it exists, even when you're surrounded by people who care about you. You're never truly received by anyone, because you never let anyone receive you. There's also a quiet resentment that builds, not always conscious, but it's there. I do so much for everyone, and no one ever checks on me. What they don't realize is, no one knows to check, because they've become so good at appearing fine. And here's the twist that science actually backs up. Research in social psychology shows that people want to be asked for help. Being trusted with someone's need activates the same reward centers in the brain as receiving the gift. It makes people feel valued, capable, connected. So when you refuse to ask, thinking you're protecting others from inconvenience, you're actually withholding something from them, a chance to matter to you.
And now, the reason we've been building toward, the one that hides beneath all the others. When you solve your own problems alone, your brain rewards you. A small hit of dopamine, a quiet sense of superiority, a moment where you get to think, see, I told you, I don't need anyone. And it feels good, which is part of why the pattern is so hard to break. Self-sufficiency stops being just a habit. It becomes a reward loop that feeds itself, a proof of something. The problem is, you can be right and still be lonely. The good news is this: asking for help is a skill, and like any skill, it can be learned, slowly, gently, on your own terms. It doesn't mean becoming someone who overshares or can't function alone. It means finding the space between, I need no one, and I can't do anything by myself. It starts with something small, letting a friend pay for coffee this time, saying, actually, I could use a hand with this, when someone offers. Sending the message, even when every instinct tells you to delete it. And here's a reframe that might help. When you ask someone for help, you're not burdening them. You're offering them something. A chance to be part of your life. To stand next to you in something real. Think of it as handing someone an invitation. I trust you enough to let you in. That's not weakness. That's one of the most generous things one person can do for another. And yes, it might be the most rebellious, most terrifying, most profoundly human thing you ever do. So if you recognize yourself in this video, if you're the person who always has it handled, who types the message and then erases it, who says I'm fine before the question is even finished, I want you to know something. The version of you that learned to need no one, they were smart, they were brave, they did what they had to do to survive. But you're allowed to update the rules now. You're allowed to let someone carry something with you. Not because you're weak, but because connection requires two people, one who gives, and one who is willing to receive. And the world needs more people, brave enough to do both.